He survived nearly every situation and every battlefield that the Union Army threw at him. But he couldn't survive his own men. And right here in this building, one of the greatest legends in the Confederacy's history took his last breath. Today, we're going to show you this building, and we're going to talk about Thomas Stonewall Jackson. Well, welcome back to History with Waffles. Again, we're taking you to one of the places where history actually happened. We're walking to the house right now, or the office building, where Stonewall Jackson actually died after the Battle of Chancellorsville. This place, there's not much here. Small parking lot, nice little road that leads up to it, and then of course, the building itself. Now, admittedly, I've been here about 10 times. And all 10 times I've not been able to get inside of that building. I got to figure out what the schedule is so I can see what the inside of this building looks like and maybe bring it to you here on this channel. But this is a beautifully preserved place. The grass is always nice and cut. The sidewalks are clean. The building is well taken care of. The shrine itself is in decent shape. And there's a great place to sit out here on some benches and kind of reflect on things. So we're going to take you around here, let you see what this building looks like from the outside, and talk about that. I guess there's no better way to kick this off than to really take you to the building itself and kind of walk around the building and show you what this place looks like up close and personal. It's probably the best way to see something like this is to be out here yourself to get the gravity of how big this place is. For an outbuilding, it's about the size of an average house in America today. It's not small, it's also not huge. It's not a mansion or anything. There are a few rooms on the inside here. And then the entrance here to the front, which actually led to the house where the Chandlers used to live. That's the Chandler house site right there. Little depression in the ground. So hopefully you guys can see this pretty clearly for yourself. Now I would try to pop over to the window and let you see inside, but the windows are in pretty rough shape. You can't really see in there utilizing this camera. Again, like I said, I'm going to check that schedule to see if this place is ever open and try to come back so we can show you what the inside of this building looks like. Born in what is known now as Clarksburg, West Virginia, Stonewall Jackson's born into poverty. But here pretty soon, he starts to make a name for himself as he's a West Point cadet. He's a really good officer. He makes his way to the Mexican War, becomes a hero of that war, then becomes a VMI instructor, earns a reputation there as well. And at the outbreak of the American Civil War, he earns a very high promotion in the Confederate Army. He resigns his commission to the United States Army in order to do so. And at Manassas, Stonewall Jackson gets that nickname. Bernard B. there at the battle utters those infamous words, "There is Jackson standing like a stone wall." But that stone wall would fall at the Battle of Chancellorsville. Hooker has decided that he's going to move his army down into the Chancellor area, or at least a portion of it, and he's going to make a major attack from that location. He's trying to get around Robert E. Lee's army, who's been entrenched up in Fredericksburg for quite some time. Well, Lee kind of sniffs it out. And before you know it, Lee has devised a plan with General Jackson to split the army and move General Jackson's portion of the army around the flank of the Union Army and attack it from a surprise flank attack. And surprisingly enough, it actually works this time. Many times both armies have tried to do something like this, similar, not really split their army in half to do it, but surprise flank attacks are really the goal, and this time it really works. Jackson's men come out on the flank and overrun a position that the Union Army is in. But it doesn't work all the way. This is what leads to Jackson ending up out there in the middle of the night, forward of his lines, trying to find an advantage so that they can press that attack. And then it happens. The North Carolinians behind those lines hear the noise, they hear the sounds of the horses, and they think that it's Union cavalry coming up. And they end up firing into Jackson's entourage. Several men go down. Someone yells, "Stop, you're firing into your own men." Another man orders them to ignore that, saying that it's Union cavalry, and they continue to fire. Jackson's hitting the hand, he's hitting the arm twice, hitting the elbow, and his arm's pretty much shattered. And he starts bleeding profusely there in Chancellorsville along that dirt road where the marker is today. In the fields directly behind me, a soldier's nightmare came from those tree lines. General Jackson had a grand plan, and he planned it out with Robert E. Lee. And that plan was simply to swing around and hit the flank of the Union Army and catch them by surprise. Well, it couldn't have went more perfectly, because when the animals come fleeing out of these woods down through the encampments and these rolling hills here, they had no idea that Jackson was right on their flank and their Confederate army was about to overrun the entire camp. Now the camera here doesn't do this any justice. Jackson was poised for a surprise flank attack out here on this field and all across the road. So there's battlefield land preserved by the American Battlefield Trust here that you can come out and walk on and kind of relax and see the wayside markers over there underneath the tree and determine what this was all like. But across this field, there would have been thousands and thousands of Union soldiers out here, and they were just now getting down to cooking up some food and hanging out in their campsites and just having a general good time. There had been reports that off in the distance, way off over here, that General Jackson's men had been spotted, but those reports were ignored. O.O. Howard's men were in for one heck of a fight right here on this field. And coming from that direction right there where that car is driving, General Jackson and his men would come from that wood line over there, way off in the distance. First the animals came on. Then all of a sudden, while the soldiers were musing why all these animals were running out across the field, thousands of Confederate soldiers would pour out of those areas in formation after marching through there as silently as possible and then letting the rebel yell out as they come across this field, hitting the flank of the Union Army. Immediately, it caused panic. Officers ran, grabbed their swords, got their men, tried to create formation out here on these fields. The formations would collapse and they would fall back and they would continue to pancake further and further beyond the ridge lines over here until finally they were able to piece the units together back in one location way off in the distance over there and slow down the attack that was coming on. But the damage was done. And what you see out in front of us right now is the location where the Chandler house would have been. And this building where Jackson was in was actually an office building. It wasn't really a house. At the time Jackson gets here, they have furniture and things like that stored in the locations, very private and quiet. There's nothing in there. It was a recreation room at one point in time, and then an office building for the Chandler family, who owned a 740-acre plantation out here. If you can imagine, 740 acres, that's pretty massive. And the piece of land that's here right now that's a part of this park is very tiny compared to the size of that plantation home and plantation land that used to be out here. This was not a very quiet place. There used to be a lot of noise and things going on around here because this 740-acre plantation required a lot of enslaved people. So this was not a very nice place for the people who were working this land at all. The Chandler family greatly benefited from the farm work out here, but at the time of the Chancellorsville battle, when Jackson comes up out here, there's really not too much activity happening, and the Chandlers actually offer the house to Jackson and others who are wounded in that battle. They decide it's best to put Jackson back here where he can get some privacy while trying to rest up. Initially, they were at Guinea Station, but then the rails had been cut. So this is where he ends up. So Jackson's wounded on May 2nd. Eventually, he has his arm amputated. Dr. McGuire prescribes the amputation for him. That may or may not have been the right move, but at the time, that's what they knew to do. The only thing that they couldn't do, though, is they couldn't solve pneumonia. They didn't have a method to make that happen. When he comes over here, I believe he was moved about the 5th of May. He ends up what they thought with a cold at the time, but it turns out it was pneumonia. And then Dr. McGuire actually diagnosed him with that pneumonia in the right lung. A few days linger on, and he starts getting a little delirious. And then that's when Dr. McGuire lets his wife know that he didn't think he had very much time left. His wife informs Stonewall Jackson that he's about to die. Shortly after the wounding of Jackson, he's constantly being approached by other officers, approached about what they should do. One of his officers says he doesn't think he can hold the line because the line's so broken. It gets a rise out of Jackson. He raises up almost immediately and says, "You must hold this line." And hold the line they did. Hill is wounded. The command falls to Jeb Stuart. Jeb Stuart sends back to Jackson, wants to know what he should do. At this point in time, Jackson is so overwhelmed that he doesn't have much to say, and he tells him to do what he thinks is best. That's pretty much it for Stonewall Jackson in the field. He does issue one last order. While he's here in this building, dying on his deathbed, for some odd reason, one last time, he issues out an order for Hill, telling his men to come up, putting them into place. What exactly his words are, I don't know. There's so many things written, it's kind of different. But it's essentially, he's ordering Hill around. And oddly enough, when Robert E. Lee dies, he does something similar, according to the things that I've read. But that was his last order here at this facility, the Chandler office, here on the 740-acre plantation. The American Civil War would go on and rage on for a long time after Jackson was dead. While he was on the scene, he was a part of a lot of victories. He was probably one of the more successful officers for Robert E. Lee, at least one of the more trusted officers for sure. There's a debate as to how successful he really was, considering some of the things that he did during the 7 days battles, and how he kind of confused orders. His men got maneuvered around improperly in certain places. But you can't deny the success that he had at Chancellorsville and the impact that his loss was on that army. Eventually, the Confederacy is whittled down by Grant all the way to Petersburg, Grant and Meade. The siege breaks wide open, and Robert E. Lee and what's left of his army is on the move to Appomattox, eventually surrendering there in Appomattox. But long after the war is over with, the myth of Stonewall Jackson is played out in songs, poems, and books. This is the place you go to see the house where he expired. This is really where the myth should have ended. But because of his legendary status, it continues on, even today. On Sunday, May 10th, Jackson's wife told her husband that the doctor did not think he would live through the day. "Very good. It is all right," he said, adding that he had always wanted to die on Sunday. "It will be an infinite gain to be translated to heaven." His mind seemed to wander then. He shouted orders to subordinates, instructing A.P. Hill to prepare for action. In mid-afternoon, while the room was filled with bright spring sunshine, he said in a firm but quiet voice, "Let us cross over the river and rest under the shade of the trees." And he died. Lee immediately issued General Order Number 61. With deep regret, the commanding general announces the death of Lieutenant General T.J. Jackson. Let his name be a watchword for his corps who have followed him to victory on so many fields. Let his officers and soldiers emulate his invincible determination to do everything in the defense of our loved country. Well, the myth starts. Jackson dies, he's moved, eventually buried, and the what-ifs continue. What if he was at Gettysburg? What if he was here? What if he was there? What would have happened had he not died? General Lee even issuing those orders that he issued and saying the things that he said about Stonewall Jackson adds to the myth itself. Jackson's own arm is buried in the front yard of a house where it had been moved to, and then enshrined and put in a metal box. People still go out there and visit that too. So the man was larger than life when it came to the American Civil War, and many things were written about him, poems and such about his death, and the what-ifs of the American Civil War surrounding Stonewall Jackson. But here at this place, the only thing that you see is a house that you can't get into, or an outbuilding, and a lot of silence. There's really not much around here. But it's a beautiful place to come to and visit, that's for sure. I have in front of me here a map, if you will, of the building itself. So this will give us a little understanding. You can kind of see right there. It comes from the Park Service itself. Over here is the front porch. You can see sticking off of the house here. And then as you go into the front porch, there's a small room on the side here. On the opposite side is called the entrance hall. Back behind the entrance hall is the death room. And then this area here is called the waiting room. And then there's like a storage area back here. So we'll walk around here and show you. Again, small room right there with the waiting room in the back. And then the entrance hall, I'm guessing, is the door right here. this area here. This main window shows the entrance hall area, and then this window here shows where the death room is. I just wanted to pause for a moment and just kind of record the sounds that are around me here. I've been sitting out here on this bench next to where the house is. You can see the office building. You can see the building there where Thomas Stonewall Jackson actually died. And this place is very quiet. There's not a lot of activity, and probably not too many people come out here and visit this spot. It's just a building. There's nothing to see there. As a matter of fact, most days I think the building's probably closed. Probably for that reason, because there's not much to see and hardly anybody ever comes out here. But you can look inside the windows and you can see the floors. You can see the old building still standing and the spot where the house used to be. But out here, there's a kind of calm that takes over this place. For a place that used to be so busy. You can hear the sounds of the farm off in the distance. I could even hear the cows off in the distance earlier. The birds making noise and the breeze coming through the trees. But this is definitely a place to reflect and just kind of sit back and relax a little bit, because not just for that man that died in that house, but the many, many people that died along the way in the American Civil War. There are countless amounts of men that died in that war, whose names will never be written in history, who died alone on battlefields in violent moments. No peace for them when they passed away. These fields, these locations, these national parks, each and every one of them have a purpose, and they tell a story. And if you sit back and listen long enough, you'll understand it. It's a wonderful place to sit. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our video out here at the Thomas Stonewall Jackson death site. We're going to get down the road and do some more videos here pretty soon. Until next time, this is History with Waffles.